So let's review the Yoga Asana foundations. So we'll start with the standing asanas. Standing poses help us to energetically ground us emotionally and help us to re-establish our connection with the earth through our feet. Standing poses teach us to be able to stand confidently in our own skin and discover our own inner strength and resilience. They teach us about balance and the ability to focus on our goals. Standing poses also work to improve our posture and spinal health. They strengthen and support our hips and core health. They also strengthen our lower body, including our legs, knees, ankles and feet. Standing poses can be sequenced in almost any section of the class, with the exception of Savasana, including the warm-ups, the peak poses, the flows and the wind downs. So let's have a look at the knees in standing poses. Generally, in standing yoga poses, roughly 80% of our body weight passes through our knees, making them very vulnerable to injuries. An important alignment cue for knee safety is always to ask your students to have their knees facing in the same direction as their toes. This general cue helps our knees to be safe and stabilised. Another general cue to keep in mind is when the knees are bent in standing poses. In these situations, it's best practice to keep the knees stacked directly over the ankles or slightly behind them. Doing this helps to protect our knees and ankles from injuries. Our knee health is connected to the health of our surrounding joints, our hips and our ankle joints. One important way to protect the knees is to take time to strengthen and stretch these surrounding areas. It's helpful to sequence poses that gently straighten and stretch the hips and ankles, especially before any heavy weight bearing poses are on the knees. Now let's look at feet alignment. When teaching standing poses, it's always helpful to teach these poses from the ground up. This means focusing on firming the foundation of the feet to the earth first and then cueing upwards in the body. For example, if you were cueing mountain pose, you would begin your cues with the foundation of the feet and then work your way up. In standing poses, it's also important to be mindful to cue for the upper body and not just the lower body. Our core, upper body and spinal health all directly affect the health of our lower body. Everything in the body is connected and each part supports one another. So it's important to be mindful of all the different areas of the body in standing poses. The core is a central part of our bodies and helps to keep us balanced in standing poses. A good way to cue the core in standing poses is to bring awareness to this area by gently drawing the belly in towards the spine or feeling the core muscles activate. Keeping the spine lengthened is also important for having a safe foundation in our legs during standing poses. The best way to cue for spinal alignment is to ask students to keep their length in their spine. And you can achieve this by using metaphors or imagery of energy in their spine, lengthening up towards the sky. Help your students keep their shoulders in alignment by instructing them to keep their shoulders down away from their ears. And this will help them to release tension from the spine and shoulders. How wide a student's stance is in different standing poses will be dependent on the student's flexibility, their practice level and their body structure. So for example, a mountain pose, some students might prefer to have their feet about hip distance apart, while others may prefer to have them close together. Both are correct. In standing poses, such as Warrior 1, Warrior 2 and wide-legged forward fold, the wideness of each student's stance will also be different. You may find some students have a very wide stance due to increased hip and hamstring flexibility, while others may have a shorter stance. Both of these are okay, as long as the overall alignment structure of the poses are correct, and the feet are firmly grounded onto the mat. The best way to offer direction to your students is to have them to focus on how each pose feels in their bodies. If they are feeling tension in the hips and knees, perhaps coming into a wider stance may be more comfortable for them. On the other hand, they could have tight hips or hamstrings, so a closer stance could be more comfortable.